So it's happening, it's finally happening. Live fans are officially returning to WWE programming. WWE is going back on tour. This is breaking news that has just been announced in the last couple of minutes or so. It's the worst kept secret in professional wrestling at the moment. But WWE have officially announced finally that live fans are set to return to the programming of WWE starting in July. Now, this was literally, as I mentioned, just announced a couple of minutes or so ago, so bear with me if I'm a little bit scattered on the details, but WWE posted a tweet. It said, quote, WWE live events are back. A 25-city tour, including WWE Raw, SmackDown, and Money in the Bank, kicks off on July 16. So July 16 is going to be the beginning date, and we're going to have Money in the Bank being the first pay-per-view to have live fans in attendance since WrestleMania as well. So it's a very short statement. It's very WWE. You remember back in March, whenever the announcement was made that fans were going to be returning for WrestleMania, when that announcement was made, it was finally, they're using The Rock's voice and catchphrase, finally live fans are returning to WWE programming, and then there was no details for like 10 days, and it was a case of things getting delayed and all this kind of stuff. I don't know if that's the case this time, but it's a little bit reminiscent of that in that we have more details, but we don't have a ton. A very short statement that was released by WWE. So this was just released, quote, WWE will return to live event touring with a 25-city schedule through Labor Day. The tour will debut this July in Texas with a trio of shows. Friday, July 16, SmackDown in the Toyota Center in Houston, Texas. Sunday, July 18, Money in the Bank at Dickies Arena in Fort Worth, Texas. And Monday, July 19, Raw in the American Airlines Center in Dallas, Texas. Tickets for the live events in Houston, Fort Worth, and Dallas go on sale this Wednesday, May 26 at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Additional tour stops and on-sale dates will be announced in the coming weeks. So, there is, even though that's a really small statement, there is a lot to break down in that. First of all, 25 cities, but they've only announced 3 dates. I don't know if that's because they don't know exactly which dates in which cities at the moment. I would assume that they have a rough idea, and they at least have an idea of which dates are going to correspond with which locations in all of these 25 cities. But I think they're still trying to confirm that or figure it out. I guess their priority was that these SmackDown, Raw, and Money in the Bank events got confirmed, got booked, got put in the system, got ready for tickets to be released for those dates. So what can we take away from that? The reports that were stating that July 16 was going to be the first date that WWE went back on tour, I think it was first broken by the McMahon podcast, is accurate. And that Money in the Bank was going to be the first pay-per-view with live fans in attendance, that was accurate. And that Money in the Bank was replacing Extreme Rules in July, that is accurate as well. So it's going to be fascinating. Now, again, 25 cities. I don't know what they don't say here, and I think it'd probably be the next thing that people would be discussing is, okay, WWE are going back to touring. We know that WWE President Nick Khan stated a couple of months ago when he was asked about touring and live fans returning on a regular basis, he said at the time, look, when WWE goes back to having live fans in attendance, when we go back to touring, we're on the road then. We're not going back to the Thunderdome. We're not doing anything else. We're going back to touring. We're going to have live fans in attendance. Once we begin, that's it. We're not doing any more one-offs. WrestleMania was a one-off because it's WrestleMania. We're not ready. We weren't ready at that point to have live fans back on a regular basis, and we weren't ready to have be back on a touring schedule because of obviously still the issues with the pandemic and still the issues with all that kind of stuff, vaccination rollout, all that kind of stuff. So we weren't ready at that time. We felt it was necessary as a one-off to do it for WrestleMania, but we're telling you now that when we return, we're returning full-time. That's it. I think the interesting element now will be, coming out of this announcement, will be, okay, so we know that SmackDown on the Friday on July 16 is going to have live fans. We know that Money in the Bank that Sunday on July 18 is going to have live fans. We know that Monday, July 19 is going to have live fans. What happens to other live events now? Because previously, we would have the traditional WWE live event tour, which would be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. It would be 5 days on, 2 days off. That's what it would usually be. back in the day, pre-COVID. Now, we don't know at this point if that's what WWE are going back to. We don't know if that's the case. And as I mentioned, they have made the announcement that live fans are returning. They have put some official dates onto that they are going to be returning by. But we don't know still what this whole new structure is going to look like. I would be really, really surprised. I would be really surprised if just because of this announcement that they go right back to what they were doing before. That whole live event system anyway, even pre-pandemic, was a really outdated system. And I think everyone agrees with that. Maybe not those high up in WWE, but everyone agrees that the live event system and schedule was incredibly outdated. Even back then, especially now in this new modern world that we're living in. We're still in the pandemic, but as we find whatever this new version of normal is going to be. So it's going to be interesting to see how many live events they are booking. They say a 25-city schedule. Does that mean 25 dates? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that one, and they haven't mentioned any other states. So they're just saying that this 25-city schedule begins in Texas, and I think they're probably going to feel out which states are opening up. Of course, you've got Texas, you've got Florida. There have been obviously discussions about Las Vegas when it comes to SummerSlam. SummerSlam, it hasn't been confirmed that it's going to be in Vegas, but near enough has. I think Sports Illustrated broke that story yesterday. Fightful was saying prior to that Vegas was an option. WrestleVotes was teasing that Vegas was an option as well. So all of this kind of stuff, when it comes to Vegas, is definitely there. So we know that Nevada is going to be a location for them as well. So you got Texas, Florida, Nevada. I think is it AEW are going to go to Missouri as well. I don't know if that's next year. So there are certainly options, and I think that WWE are probably looking at, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, confirming these cities, confirming these venues, and also trying to work with the local governments, state governments, and saying, okay, what can we feasibly do? And you do have to also think about where is the demand as well. I think everyone, and I think it's been proven at this point that, especially with the rollout of vaccinations and a better understanding of the pandemic, there is a desire, isn't there? There absolutely is a desire from everyone to get back out there, to go to events that they haven't been able to go to for the last 18 months, whether it is pro wrestling events, whether it's going to the movies, whether it's going to sporting events, and everything is gradually beginning to open up. So I think there's a demand there, obviously, but they're going to still, even prior to the pandemic, you have to know your markets. You have to know your markets where the demand is there. So I think that's also going to be interesting as well. Fundamentally, though, let's strip away all of the business element of it. Let's strip away the cities and the locations and the dates and the pay-per-views and the TV shows and all that kind of stuff. It's great, isn't it? It's great news, and we will talk about the AEW slant on things in a second, because that is important to talk about. But it is great news, isn't it? It's fantastic news. The pandemic has shown, like we all kind of knew anyway, but the pandemic has shown that professional wrestling, we used to say it's nothing without the fans, but we truly realized it. It is nothing without the fans. Now, it can carry on, and you get this sort of weird, I don't even know what it was, performance TV show without fans, but without fans in attendance, it's just a completely different product, and not a good one. And I don't think we ever truly realized how important fans were. Like I said, I think we used to always say it, and I think people within the industry used to always say it, that you always knew that, for instance, if you had a match in an arena in front of a crowd, they always say, like, a good crowd can take a decent match up into being a great match, because it's the crowd that really brings the energy. It's the crowd that spurs on the performer. It's the reaction of the false finishes, of the near falls, of the drama, of the heel getting heat and the babyface getting the cheers and all that kind of stuff. It really is the crowd that can make that moment. Hulk Hogan versus The Rock. If you turn the sound off at WrestleMania 18, it's an okay match, but it's not amazing. It's not this WrestleMania classic that we talk about even to this day. But with the sound on, with the reaction of the audience there in the Sky Dome in Toronto, Canada, it's just something completely different. And I think that's a great example of how important crowds are. And in those empty arena performance center shows, or those AEW really didn't do a ton of empty arena shows because they always had the people surrounding the ring for a bit of atmosphere. But we found out, didn't we, that it's so hard. It's so hard to really, truly get properly invested in these shows, and just, it's a tough watch, and you realize pro wrestling kind of loses a bit of the magic without having fans there. So to get back to that new version normal, whatever it is, or to get back to just a feeling, a sense of normality with fans being back. Now, it's important to state there that they haven't said how many fans are going to be at these events and how many tickets are going to be available. As I mentioned, it's a very, very short statement that WWE have released. It's a very short announcement. They mentioned that the tickets for those 3 events that they've mentioned, the SmackDown, the Money in the Bank, and the Raw, go on sale on Wednesday, the 26th of May. So I don't even know then if they'll really confirm how many tickets are going to be available. I would assume, like with anything with these kind of stories, that details will come out today, tomorrow, over the course of the next week or so to really dial down how many tickets and how many fans are going to be able to attend the event. It could even be a case where WWE's got an expectation of how many people they want to attend the event, and then the state officials, the local officials, or the arena, whoever, they might decide, actually, you know what, that's too many people. It was the same for WrestleMania. They wanted 45,000 people there per night, and then 90,000 overall for the weekend. And the local state officials and government officials in Tampa Bay in Florida, they said, actually, that's a bit too much even for right now. Let's dial it down to 25,000. So we don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how many fans WWE is allowed to have, how many fans show up. Obviously, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about the AEW element in there, and it has to be discussed. I don't want this to turn into a big, contest of, we did it first and they did it first and AEW got there first, which forced WWE's hand. But the facts kind of are there with that one. All of the reports, and I know WWE officials, if they're going to be asked about this, or if in a couple of years' time, when people have got their own podcasts after they left the company or anything like that, the discussion point will be, were WWE forced to speed up plans because of AEW's announcement that they were going to return to touring in July? And of course, their answer will be no, because WWE has the hard and fast line that, you know what, we're not even looking at AEW. AEW aren't even competition. We don't pay any attention to AEW. We don't pay any attention to anything that AEW does. It's ludicrous to think that they're competition. We just do WWE. They do professional wrestling. We do sports entertainment. All that kind of narrative, all that kind of BS. The reality is WWE's hand was forced by this. All of the reports that came out previously, and to be honest, all of the reports that came out about the August date for WWE's return to touring came from these same people that have been talking about this new development in terms of the July date for WWE. So it goes to show that obviously their sources are accurate there. So for the last month or so, 6 weeks certainly, the discussion had been, when it came to WWE, the return to touring, live fans in attendance, is that would begin at SummerSlam in August. That would be the kickoff point for the live fans to return to WWE programming on a regular basis. That would be the kickoff point to a return to touring. It was going to start at SummerSlam. It was going to be this big, great reset of WWE programming, and then Raw and SmackDown, respectively, were going to go on the road, and they were going to go back to normal. They were going to have live fans in attendance. That was the plan. Those were the plans, and those were the widely attributed reports. And I think everyone thought, okay, that's the case. Also, you have to factor in there WWE's residency at the Youngling Center in Tampa Bay, Florida, ends at the end of August, so that ties in nicely with SummerSlam as well. It made a lot of sense logistically, and when you put the pieces together, you went, that's probably the outcome. Well, I don't think what WWE expected was AEW to come out and say, well, we're returning to touring in July, early July. They announced their return to touring. They've got obviously Double or Nothing at the end of May, which is going to have a full capacity in Daly's Place. They've stated events they're going to be doing in Florida, and is it Texas as well? And that's mid to beginning of July. And the response from that initially straight away was, well, we're going to have to wait and see what WWE does, because they're not going to like it. When I say they, one man in particular, that being Vince McMahon, is not going to like it. WWE, despite not wanting to claim that they're in the professional wrestling industry, they are the industry leader in sports entertainment, and they hate it. Obviously, they hate it that another professional wrestling company can come out and say, well, we were the first professional wrestling company to go back to live touring or to be on the road again, full-time touring. They hate that. They will absolutely hate that. And the discussion was then, well, is this going to force WWE to speed up their plans? Initially, the answer was no. That wasn't going to happen, and WWE had their plans for August, and you had the impression they'd been working since sort of April, March time for SummerSlam to be the official launch date of them returning to touring. And then, wouldn't you know it, within just a couple of days of AEW making this announcement about a return to touring in July, suddenly the reports start to come out. WWE, they're planning on returning to touring in July. It was going to be SummerSlam, but now it's going to be the July pay-per-view. That was Extreme Rules. Now we know it's Money in the Bank. And then the report came out saying, July 16, that the SmackDown on the Friday would be the first show with live fans in attendance, and that would be the kickoff to WWE's return to touring, all that kind of stuff. And they were right. They were right. And it's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence. WWE obviously had plans to return to touring in August. Once they saw the announcement from AEW, Vince McMahon went, right, if they can do it, we can do it. And I don't know if it's necessarily an ego thing. I think that plays into it. I think obviously it plays into it, but I think in reality, probably the biggest element of this is WWE realized, wait a minute, if AEW, a smaller company, let's be honest, a smaller company with smaller brand recognition than WWE, if they can return to touring in July, then why can't we? Because there's money to be made there. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. Yes, it does come down to ego and pride, and WWE obviously doesn't like it that AEW can say they were the first professional wrestling company to return to touring. Obviously, they don't like that. But in reality, they look at this and say, we can get dates in here and we can get fans in the building. We can start making some money. And WWE, of course, has been making money throughout the entirety of the pandemic. They like to tell everyone that they're having record years and record revenues and record profits despite the pandemic. But they also realize that there's money to be made. And that's all they care about. This is the same company in the height of the pandemic when it was first starting last year in March. For a while, they were going to do WrestleMania still in Raymond James Stadium until they were physically forced by the local government and the local sports authority. No, everything's shutting down. WWE were going to do it. If it was up to WWE, they would have done it. So once WWE has got the green light here and realize there's money to be made, they will go and make it. Vince McMahon will go and make it. And that's really what it comes down to. Yes, ego and all that kind of stuff will play into it. And yes, it might come down to WWE hating that Tony Khan pipped them to the post when it comes to touring and all that kind of stuff. Ultimately, I think it comes down to money. The discussion must have been, wait a minute, we're going to start at the end of August when there's 6 weeks worth of television and 6 weeks worth of live events we could be doing. Why wouldn't we go out and do that? Why wouldn't we go out and make the money? I mean, there's no better time than right now. So I think that's the case. So it's going to be interesting to see what other cities that they announce. Again, I think I don't know a ton about, obviously, US states opening up and stuff like that. I'm over here based in the United Kingdom, so I wouldn't know. But I think it would be relatively obvious about which states they're going to, depending on how, what's their process of opening up at the moment and all that kind of stuff. You would think the big ones would be Texas, would be Florida. Again, the other ones, I don't know. You can tell me in the comment section below. I know Dave Meltzer was talking about possibly Madison Square Garden for SummerSlam, which of course has been proven to be inaccurate because it's essentially been confirmed that it's Vegas. I don't know what the situation is with New York at the moment in terms of them opening back up, but it's an exciting time, and we can talk, and we have spoken about WWE's reaction to AEW and them being, oh, we wanted to get there before AEW and all that kind of stuff. We can talk about that, and that's fine. But ultimately, I think what we should be celebrating here is the return of fans to WWE television. That's the most exciting thing. Is that we're getting back to the pro wrestling or the presentation of professional wrestling that we do enjoy. And I think on another aspect of things, there are certain gimmicks and elements of WWE programming right now that when live fans return, a lot is going to change. Roman Reigns, even though he's a heel right now, he'll be the most over guy in WWE because he's the best character on WWE television right now. That's going to be fascinating. Stuff like the Zombie Lumberjack match at WrestleMania Backlash, if there was live fans in attendance, that would so not fly. They would have got booed out of the building, and potentially that could have killed off the whole pay-per-view, because once the fans are upset about something, they can just carry that for the remainder of the show. So that kind of stuff you would hope is not going to happen. Even Maryse, another great example on Monday Night Raw. I don't know if they're positioning her as a babyface or not. If they try, she's going to get booed out of the building by live fans in attendance. All of that is exciting because for a long time with the Thunderdome, WWE's been able to control the narrative of what the audience does and doesn't like. That goes out of the window, and we are going to get these stories now of people that get over in front of the live audience and they force WWE's hand. It's upsetting that people like Billie Kay were released, because I have no doubts in my mind if Billie Kay was doing what she was doing with a live crowd there, then she would still be with WWE right now because she would be so popular. That kind of stuff is the stuff that I'm really looking forward to, of that real organic stuff that WWE tries to control, but they can't. That's the stuff that I think we have to really look forward to when it comes to the return of live fans. Now, a couple of other things I did want to talk about, because when this news came out, I was prepping for the WWE today's WWE news video, so I do want to touch on a couple of other things. The Velveteen Dream, obviously, we did a video last night talking about his release from WWE. But I wanted to highlight this because longtime WWE artist Rob Schamberger has taken to Twitter to react to the news of Velveteen Dream's WWE release. Now, Schamberger called Dream the single most unprofessional person he has encountered in the business, while adding that the wrestler needs to do emotional work to become a better person. Now, this was after the news broke of Dream's release, and whilst he never actually says the Velveteen Dream by name, it's very obvious who he's talking about. So this is what he said. Quote, without saying anything further, he was the single most unprofessional person I've encountered in this business. I hope this is a wake-up call. He needs to start doing the emotional work to become a better person, all told. Now, Schamberger's work in WWE is printed on a variety of merchandise. He's done a ton of, again, merchandise, videos, paintings. He's pretty much painted, I mean, most of the biggest people in WWE history and on the WWE roster today, all this kind of stuff. He's very well respected as an artist and in WWE for his work he's done. And these stories that are coming out about the Velveteen Dream now, after his release, I mean, stuff like that, saying that he was unprofessional and all that kind of stuff, it's just a massive shame. And again, my opinion really hasn't changed that much on it from last night, in that this was a guy at one point that was destined for great things in WWE, and you felt that his rise to the top in WWE was inevitable. John Cena called him the One when describing who was going to be the future of the company, and it's a shame, but ultimately, he put himself in this position, and obviously the allegations are just that at the moment, allegations. And I know some people are trying to defend him and saying that, they're just allegations and they're not proven to be true. And that is true. They haven't been proven to be accurate, and there is obviously a due process, and there's innocent until proven guilty, and no charges have been filed, but the evidence is pretty damning. And on top of that, there's other stuff of, getting in a car crash or getting injured, and if it's just on top of that, if it's unprofessional behavior as well backstage, then you pick your poison, essentially. So I found that story to be quite interesting. Another thing, since we're talking about NXT, and then we'll wrap things up here, is The Rock's daughter, Simone Johnson. Everyone's really excited to see what she brings to WWE. Of course, she was signed, was it last year, about coming to WWE. Obviously, a fourth-generation talent? Incredible. Now, The Rock's daughter, Simone Johnson, is reportedly making progress at the Performance Center as she trains for her eventual NXT debut. Simone was most improved developmental talent in squats for a period of January to May this year, according to the Wrestling Observer radio show. It was noted that the second most improved in squats in January to May was Skylar Story. Story was just released from her WWE contract on Wednesday of this week. Now, WWE announced in February of 2020 that Simone had begun training at the Performance Center. It was then announced in May 2020 she signed a contract. Simone has still not made her NXT debut, and it's been reported that she won't for some time as she trains to continue to learn the industry. Now, again, we don't know how long it will be before she arrives in NXT. I do know she's had some issues of injuries. I think she's like 19, 20, and she's already had like 3 knee surgeries. Obviously, that could mean anything. I mean, obviously, it could mean an issue later on in her career, but it could mean an opposite of The Rock had a ton of knee surgeries because of his football days. So we'll have to wait and see. When it comes to that bit in the article that said, well, the other person that came second got released, Simone Johnson ain't getting released from WWE anytime soon. The only reason she would get released is if she said she didn't want to do it anymore. They ain't firing The Rock's door. That's just how it's happening. But anyway, guys, look, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on the news that WWE is returning officially to live event touring? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestling News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right-hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.